Helen's grandkids called her doodles, old lady scribbles, until a stranger in Auckland Art Fair gripped her wrist. "Who taught you color theory?" Paint flecks still crusted under nails from yesterday's compulsive daubing. 65 years of proper jobs never shook vibes. That canvas in her garage? Just a sneaky rebellion against golf course retirement small talk. But now, with community show flyers piling up like unopened bills, someone finally noticed. Her shaky brush strokes held whole galaxies. 298 chars. Helen's grandkids called her doodles old lady scribbles until a rogue paintbrush, left behind in her late husband's toolbox, snagged her sleeve one gray Auckland morning. Its bristles, stiff with disuse, whispered of Sunday afternoons when she'd sketched seashells while he tinkered with engines. Now retirement stretched before her like an overstarched canvas, brittle and blank. She signed up for an art class with vibes of desperation, knocking over a water cup on her first attempt. But as ochre bled into cerulean, something loosened in her chest. Fear of irrelevance had coiled inside her like a forgotten key back of a cupboard, woven strong, yet gathering dust. Each stroke became a quiet rebellion against myth that creativity expired with a pension card. By summer, Helen's sun-faded porch became a studio. She painted pohutukua blossoms with same fierce tenderness she'd once reserved for scraped knees and school lunches. When Community Art Fair flyer appeared, her hand shook. But she submitted a piece anyway, a whimsical toy mid-flight, its wings edged with same gold as her wedding band. Opening night buzzed with chatter and cheap wine. A teenager pointed her work. "That's legit cool." Helen's laugh bubbled up, unexpected. Brush, now flecked with every color of her second act, had become more than a tool. It was a bridge between who she'd been and who she was becoming. Purpose, she realized, didn't retire. It simply mixed new hues. Helen's grandkids called her doodles old lady scribbles until a rogue paintbrush changed everything. One rainy Auckland afternoon, she wandered into a community center, drawn by neon flyers for art as second breath, a workshop for seasoned souls. Skeptical but curious, she clutched her grocery list like a lifeline, only to leave with a fistful of acrylics and a challenge: paint what retirement feels like. First attempts were chaotic. Her hands, more familiar with knitting needles than palette knives, fumbled. A sunset became a muddy puddle. A self-portrait looked like a startled kiwi. But instructor, a spry 70-year-old named Margot, with a penchant for polka-dot smocks, just grinned. "Messy vibes mean you're alive," she'd say, tossing she a fresh canvas. Weeks blurred into a rhythm of color and courage. She discovered layers beyond technique, how cobalt blue could mirror her restless energy, how broad strokes quieted what now whispers. That paintbrush, once just a tool, became her compass. She painted memories of teaching, of raising kids, of quiet mornings with her late husband. Each stroke was a conversation with parts of herself she'd packed away with her work ID. Then came flyer for Parnell Art Fair, its bold font daring her. Margot nudged. "Why not?" She hesitated. Showing strangers her heart felt riskier than bungee jumping, which she'd never do. "Thank you very much." But she submitted 3 pieces, including one where her grandkids' scribbles morphed into a vibrant tree, roots deep, branches reaching. Setup day jitters hit hard. Her hand shook arranging paintings between a tattooed millennial's neon abstracts and a Maori elder's woven tales. But as crowds lingered her booth, murmuring powerful and relatable, something shifted. A woman in a sun hat teared up, unraveling Helen's abstract take on retirement's tangled emotions. "You painted my story," she whispered. By sundown, Helen wasn't just a retiree or grandma. She was an artist with a waiting list for commissions, a woman who'd turned doubt into pigment. That night, she placed her paintbrush on windowsill, moonlight glinting off dried cerulean streaks. No longer just a tool, but a bridge between who she'd been and who she was becoming. And as for those old lady scribbles? Framed now, hanging in her granddaughter's room. A quiet rebellion in watercolor. Helen's grandkids called her doodles old lady scribbles until she stumbled into a community art fair by accident. Well, more like tripped over a rogue easel while scouring her sensible shoes. 65, and freshly retired, she'd spent weeks rearranging teacups like they held answers. But here, between stalls of hand-carved Maori designs and neon graffiti, something prickled under her skin. A paintbrush left on a bench gleamed like a dare. She pocketed it. Back home, Helen attacked cheap watercolor paper with fervor of someone proving a point. First attempts looked like a seagull had walked through ink, but she kept going. Mornings once lost to crosswords now bled into afternoons of stubborn color layering. She mixed blues until her kitchen resembled a mad scientist's lab, chasing that one shade that matched Auckland Harbor dawn. Doubt crept in, of course. One evening, she caught her reflection, floral blouse smudged with ochre, hair frizzing like oversteeped tea, and almost quit. Who did she think she was? But then she remembered how her grandkids' giggles had stung. This wasn't about them. Or approval. It was about way her pulse kicked up when a stroke finally looked right. 6 months in, flyers for a seniors' art show appeared library. Helen hesitated. Submitting felt like standing naked in a gale. But that brush, now frayed, stubbornly clutched in her fist, had become a lifeline. She entered. Opening night buzzed with chatter and cheap wine. Helen's piece, a whirl of ocean and sky, hung between a quilt and a ceramic owl. Strangers paused, asked questions. One woman, fingers tracing brushstrokes, murmured how it reminded her of childhood summers. Helen's throat tightened. Later, walking home under Southern Cross stars, she realized retirement hadn't stolen her purpose. It had just handed her a blank canvas. And Helen? She'd never been good leaving things empty. Grandkids visited next week. They called her work cool. She smirked, swiping a smudge of paint from her wrist. Progress. Helen's grandkids called her doodles. Old lady scribbles. Until she dipped a paintbrush into cerulean blue and smacked it across canvas like she'd been waiting 65 years to make a mess. Auckland's community art fair loomed, its flyers plastered on cafe windows, whispering "Try me." Skeptical neighbors smirked when she signed up. Retirement hobbies were for gentle watercolors, not bold strokes that screamed "I'm here." But Helen had spent months in art therapy, wrestling with blank pages that once felt like mirrors of her unused time. Now, bristles became her voice. She arrived early, fingers trembling, clutching a piece titled "Bloom Anyway," vibrant petals bursting from cracked pavement. A judge lingered, lips pursed. Same woman who'd once tutored Helen's quaint knitting club attempts. Eyes flicked over painting, then widened. A phone camera flashed. Someone gasped. Vibe shifted fast. By noon, a crowd pressed close, murmurs rising to cheers. Bloom Anyway wasn't just pretty. It was gutsy, unapologetic, alive with kind of energy that made millennials nudge each other and mutter goals. Helen's cheeks burned, but she stood straighter. That paintbrush, cheap, chipped, bought on a whim, had become a wand, rewriting her story in acrylic and audacity. Then came Twist, a local influencer, all neon nails and slick ponytail, snapped a pic. By sundown, Helen's art had gone viral. Comments flooded in, "Who is this queen?" And "Grandma's got more edge than my ex." Even skeptical Judge sidled up, offering a grudging, "Well, you've surprised us." Helen grinned, wiping flecks of paint off wrinkled hands. Surprise was just beginning. Helen's grandkids called her doodles old lady scribbles until she signed up for an art therapy workshop on a whim. 65, restless, and sick of crosswords. Auckland's community center smelled of acrylics and possibility. That first stroke of her paintbrush felt like shaking hands with a stranger who somehow knew her soul. Weeks in, her canvases morphed from hesitant smudges to bold swirls, sunset hues, ocean waves, memories of her late husband's laugh. Odd habit? She hummed ABBA while painting, off-key but joyous. When instructor suggested a local art fair, Helen balked. Who'd care? But her brush had other plans. Opening night buzzed with vibes, strangers lingering by her piece, Kaidiaki, Guardian, a fusion of Maori motifs and her own shaky rebirth. One woman teared up. "Feels like home," she whispered. Helen's chest tightened. This wasn't just paint. It was a lifeline thrown across generations. By summer, she was guiding silver-haired newbies through their first strokes, chuckling as they fretted over, ruining, blank canvases. "Darling," she'd say, winking, "messy beats empty." Community show grew, birthing a collective, Creatives Unwrinkled, where retirees traded golf clubs for glue guns. Helen's once lonely flat now brimmed with half-finished sculptures and laughter. That paintbrush? Now a baton. Pass it on. Grab a brush. Your next chapter's waiting. Splash it bold.